of Christ's birth. As we gather here on this Christmas Sunday, it's hard to believe Christmas. It seems so long ago to me that can't believe Christmas Eve was 1 week ago today. And here we are gathered to celebrate Christmas Day once again, and this time here in worship. And as we do, we hear this verse from Matthew chapter 2, verses 9 through 12, telling about the Magi's journey to the Christ child. When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them was the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. And on entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and they paid him homage. Then opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their country by another way. And God add his blessing to the reading of this word. It seems a long way from summer right now, doesn't it? We have snow falling outside, our beautiful Christmas decorations. But the thing I was thinking about as I prepared this sermon was my family's annual trip up to Colorado. We do this all the time, as I know I've talked about plenty of times from this pulpit. And we always enjoy that trip, but we always have to decide well before we go how we're going to get there. For there are 3 excellent routes to where we go in the mountains, Estes Park, Colorado. We can go directly north. Get on I-49 now, going north, and then almost I-49 goes all the way to Kansas City now with just a few breaks there in Arkansas where it hasn't been completed. And we go up to Kansas City and then head west on I-70. And then we get there. It's a long way to go, but it has the advantage of taking me through my hometown, which is always fun. So that's the first option. The second option is to head to Fort Worth and stay with our parents. Leslie's dad lives there. My parents live there. And then head either up 35 and go to Oklahoma City, through there where my sister lives. So that's a nice route for us. Get there to the middle of Kansas and then head west. Or head to Amarillo and to go up that way. And that has the advantage of being the shortest of all the routes. And so that's always a temptation. Always beforehand, we decide which way we are going to go. But we always wait to decide how we're going to return. We wait till we get there, after we've experienced our vacation. Then we decide which of these 3 routes we will take back. And normally, I would think that would be pretty easy because we would eliminate the one we had used before. We would want to try something new, something different, something we hadn't done just a few weeks before. But that route that we had taken to get there is always so tempting. Because I know now where all the construction is. I've been reminded where all the good places to stop for food and for gas and all the great rest stops that are along the way. And so I can have it all kind of mapped out as we head back together. Always tempting. I always keep my eye out on the way up for where the state troopers are, so I can be careful on the way back. I have been pulled over with my children in the car, and I still hear about that 10 years later, so I definitely want to avoid that situation. All of those tempting me back to going back the same way. Going a different way would be doing something new. And that's always challenging. It's change, right? It's uncertain. But we do recognize, and it is one of the striking comments here that's made in the story of the Magi, the wise men, that they returned home. And they chose another way to go home. They did this because they had been warned in a dream. Don't go by the way that you came, because that takes you through Jerusalem. That takes you back to Herod. And Herod, doesn't like the fact that the Christ child was born. Herod is going to be a great danger to the Christ child, perhaps a danger to you as well. So choose another way to go home. And again, this had to be hard for the wise men. They knew where all the rest stops were on the way they had come, where all the oases were, the watering holes, all the good inns. They knew when the road would be safe and when it wouldn't. And now they were heading off onto a whole new path. And that represented change. And change is scary because of the uncertainty that's there. There's a temptation just to continue going along the way we have gone. And yet, change, the promise of change, the promise that we can take a new way in our lives, the promise that things can be better than they were before, that is the gospel message. It is the promise of the gospel. Things can be better. You can be better. You can improve. You can feel better about your life. You can know that your life is more abundant than it was before. But that requires change. And there's that old familiar way that's drawing us on. It's so easy just to continue on. After all, here we are at the very end of 2017. And as I look out with 2017, it was, for some of us, it was a rough year. We had a tough year. But there were blessings there too. And even in the midst of some of our hardest times, we were reminded of how much we are loved. We can say, no matter what our year was like, we made it through. We are now here at the end of this year. And so, gosh, we succeeded in getting through this year, at least if we can make it the next 14 hours. So why change? Why do something different if what we did last year worked out okay? Well, change is difficult. But here as we start this brand new year, as we prepare to here in worship, it's something we can consider. How can we go a different way home in the coming year? How can we be better? How can we live our lives so that they are more pleasing to God? And of course, when we do that, we know we have more abundance in our lives. We feel better about our lives. We are more joyful in our lives. How can we do this? How can we choose another way home? Especially since, what do they call it in science and physics? Our inertia is pulling us the same way we always go. That's one of Newton's laws of motion. An object in motion tends to stay in motion, heading in the exact same direction, unless acted upon by another force. How do we break this inertia? How do we try something new? How do we choose another way home for this coming year? Well, this is certainly the time of the year to make motions in that direction, and that's what our New Year's resolutions normally are. If there's something we can improve in our lives, which I think we all certainly have, things we can improve, then our New Year's resolutions tend to be more treating the symptoms of what we need to improve, instead of actually making some substantial change, which according to our gospel we can do. We can make a substantial change in our lives, but instead we make resolutions about losing a few pounds or exercising a little bit more or reading more or turning off the electronics more often, things like that, instead of working on something that is more substantial in our lives. Jesus talked about this in his ministry. He talked about new and old wineskins. Do you remember that? They had wineskins back in the day, and that is where they would put the wine. They were actually the skins of goats, and they would sew them up, and they would put the new wine in the new wineskins, because as the wine fermented, as it expanded, well, so would the wineskin expand. You don't put new wine in old wineskins, and yet that's kind of what we're doing when we make these little resolutions, trying to put new wine in the old wineskins of our character, instead of changing what is at the source of it all, what would really make us into the people God would have us be. One way we do this, and we see it so much we're blind to it, actually. It is in that we think and we believe, in the story that our society tells us, is that we can change if we just figure out the right things to buy. But we don't think about this very often because it is all around us and it is all the time, this idea that our lives can be better, that we can have the lives that we want to have if we just drink this brand of beer or this brand of cola, if we buy this particular model of car. It's something we hear all the time. It's all around us and it seeps into us. And even those of us who pride ourselves on not being too much into getting new things. Gosh, that's something I always think to myself, I don't need anything. I think that, you know what? I have about 23 things on my Amazon wish list. This Amazon wish list has been great for me. I put this on the wish list. My family looks at it for Christmas. I get what I actually want for Christmas. And here are all these things that really, if I think about it, I do at some level believe that if I get these things, I will be happy. But as I look at the list, what I see there isn't new things that I don't have, things that I need. It's all upgrades of things I already have. A better blender, a better set of headphones, a better circular saw. And that's what's on my wish list, just to improve. And this idea, if I can get the better one, then I'll be happy. Everything will be better. I will be changed. My life will be changed. And of course, this is a lie. There are things about our lives we can change. And when we think about the story again of the wise men, they changed. They went home by another route because they had this dream. An angel came to them in their dream. But they only changed and decided to go home a new way after encountering Christ. You see, that's what can help us to change. That's what can make real change possible in our lives, is our willingness to encounter God through Jesus Christ. And we, like the wise men, are willing to come and to worship Christ. And that's another interesting thing about the story of the wise men. They come and they worship Jesus. They don't change because they get something. They don't get anything new. They give things away. They give to Christ, and through that giving and through their worshiping, that is how they are changed. See, it can happen, and it can happen through Jesus Christ. Basically, that's what we mean by born again. Now, born again is now because of the politicians, it is now a political term as much as anything else. But let me reappropriate it and take it back to us who started with it. Being born again means being baptized. When you are baptized, you are born again. We are dunked down in the water. It is like we have died, and then we are lifted up to a brand new life. If somebody ever asks you if you were born again, you can say to them, yes, I was baptized. That is what it means to be born again. And being born again means starting off in a brand new life. It's not the first birth, it is the second birth that can lead to new life. And as we ponder our baptisms, as we think about them, as we, if we can, remember them, then we can really be changed. That is what being born again is, into a new life. That is what repentance means. It doesn't mean just saying we're sorry. It means turning in a new direction, finding another way, and going that way instead of the way we had been going. Well, that is what happens when we encounter Christ in the manger, the Christ child at Christmas. That's what happens when we let Christ into our hearts. We can change, and that is the good news today that I'm bringing to you. Is there something in your life where you feel it is pulling you in the wrong direction? One particular thing about your life you don't like? You can change that. That's another thing our world will tell us. Oh, you can't change your character. Well, that is a lie. You absolutely can change your character. You can change important things about yourself. I tell you, one thing I love about working here at the church, especially during the week, is the fact that we have AA groups meeting. And I just think that everybody that walks into those groups is a hero. I think so much of each and every person there who has said to themselves at some point in their lives, yes, I can do it. With God's help, I can change. But there's only one way. You have to first admit that you're out of control, that you need the higher power, and then you also have to be willing to engage with a community. You can't do it all by yourself. So think about it this year, or this coming year. Think about it in these last few hours of 2017. If your life is a house, if your character is a house, what part most needs to be remodeled? What needs to be redone in the house of your life? Now, there's a couple of ways to go about this, and actually we tend to, in life, when we're talking about improving and getting better, we tend to focus on our strengths. We do this throughout life. We push our children, or at least Leslie and I have pushed our children toward their gifts and toward their talents and toward their interests. And we do this when folks go off to college. What are you good at? What do you like? What are you talented at? Well, major in that particular thing. Major in your strength. The athletes do this, don't they? The athletes who are so gifted, who can run so fast, who can lift so much weight, they work and they work and they work to shave 1/10 of 1 second off their time. They work on that strength so much. They work and work to lift just 2 or 3 more pounds, to hit the ball just a little bit further. All of these things, they have to work so hard to just get a little bit better, because that's what it takes to win. That's what it takes to be better than the other person. But just think, if some of that energy that we give to our strengths and to our talents, we take some of that and we apply it to our weaknesses. The weakest part of our character. Now, if we apply it to our strengths, we may improve this much. But if we apply it to the weakest area of our lives, the improvement can be incredible. Can be life-changing. So think about that as you think about the house that is your life and what most needs to be remodeled. What is most ramshackled? What is most neglected in life? What is that one flaw that you experience? And it kind of trickles out of your whole life. It affects everything. Oh, we're all different. It could be one of so many different things. Maybe it is a quick temper. And that is your problem. Maybe it is a quick temper, or the fact that you stay angry so much of the time. One of these problems, and maybe what you need, is patience and compassion. See, there's always the flaw, and then there's the cure, right? If the flaw is anger or impatience, then the cure is to develop patience, to develop understanding. Maybe it is in your life fear. Maybe fear is the emotion that really causes you to do just about everything in your life and make just about every decision in your life. Afraid to do one thing, afraid to do another. And you know what? Maybe for you this has resulted in loneliness. Maybe it's resulted in boredom. Well, what do you need to do? You need to find courage. And that's what you can be called to in this new year, to find courage. To go out, to find new things to do, to find new people to meet. Maybe your problem is laziness, or even, dare I say it, gluttony. Maybe that is your problem, and that is affecting all of your life in some particular way. And so, what is the answer? Some personal discipline in those areas to get you up and to get you going and to show some restraint in life. Pick out that one thing you need the most, and know that if you apply a little pressure to that one area, and let me say this, if you invite Christ into that one area, if you invite God's love and power into that one area of your life, if you wake up in the morning thinking, oh, I'm going to have a good day when it comes to this one thing, and then at night, because there's no scale to get on when it comes to most of these things, you have to, at the end of the day, say, how did I do? How could I do better tomorrow? What amazing changes can come in life. how much more abundant your life can be, how much closer you can feel to God. Just that one thing that you are going to work on here in this coming year. What would it be for you? Well, as this year ends, and as this sermon ends, let me say to you, don't accept too little from your life. Those issues that can be improved. If right now your life is storm-tossed for some reason, and you can think back and sort of diagnose it and say, well, yes, it is because of anger, it is because of fear, it is because of a lack of discipline, then you know what it is. You know where the problem lies. And now it may well be for you that all that remains is that you, like those wise men of old, find some very specific way in this new year to choose a new way home. Let us bow in prayer. Loving God, we give thanks and praise. We are so grateful for this chance you give us to change in our lives. Loving God, it's a gift that we will often leave wrapped. It's a gift we don't use as much as we should. It's a gift we take for granted. Well, here today, Lord, let us think of some very particular way to put this gift to use, to change, to grow closer to you, to take so seriously this responsibility we have to follow your Son, to be his disciples. Loving God, help us to find that will today, and here in this coming year, help us to find the power, the determination to make changes that will help us to draw closer to you. It is in Jesus Christ's name we pray.